Okay, good morning again. This is Dr. Nguyen. I'm a little bit late because I had to substitute at the library for the librarians who are not here with us. Uh, but again, we just want to continue from where we left yesterday. And we're dealing with the research process, and particularly looking at a few basic concepts. You remember we talked extensively about the uses of sources. Sources are very important in terms of writing because we are looking at two different types of sources. Remember, that's what we call the primary sources or the primary source, which is the main text you are working on. In addition to the primary source, which are the short stories, the novels, the books that you have read and you are writing the paper on, you have the secondary sources, which are critical works or articles or references that throw light on the primary source. Remember that throwing light on the primary source. They're explaining the primary source. They're writing on the primary source or sources. So these are articles like you go to the library and look at a collection of articles and collection of papers, magazines, newspapers that discuss either the primary source or create a framework, a background, a foundation on which you can actually write a paper or start talking about the primary source. That's what we call the secondary sources. And three-quarters of the time, when we see some of these sources, we are confused in terms of what to take from the sources and what not to take. You remember, now we're dealing with the American dream, and there are several texts that talk about the American dream. What do you collect from there? Which of them do you use as your primary, secondary text? The key thing you want to do is to look at those texts and see which of them actually does present or give to you the most succinct, the most accurate information on your primary source. In other words, you always have to evaluate those sources because some of them are not critical, some of them do not actually reflect what you want and the way you are taking your paper to. Some of them may use the languages is way below your level of expression or way too high, and you don't want to select any of them because you want the language to rhyme with your own language so that the understanding and the continuity or fluidity of the ideas will be even, will be uniform. So you always have to examine your sources, examine them very well. Look at the relationship between the author of that source and the area and your primary source. Definitely, if you're writing something about literature, somebody in physics wouldn't give you a very clear cut idea, a very clear or precise idea in terms of how to explain love, like for instance, love or death or the American dream in terms of physics. So definitely, you wouldn't go to a physicist or a physician or a chemist to look for that material. You definitely identify that this material is in the humanities and in or the social sciences. You may find yourself, since we're dealing with the family, looking at things like sociology or social work, disciplines that have a little bit of definition or reflection of things that are family oriented. However, you may eventually have to redefine that family from the point of view of situating it within your paper. Remember, your paper looks at that family from a very unique perspective. That the uniqueness of that perspective allows you to redefine that family. Let me give you a practical example. In the 80s, when I was writing my paper on personal identity in Arthur Miller's works, I had to go to psychology actually to look at the whole concept of identity. What do I mean by identity? Why personal? What is identity? it was very important for me to situate, to define, and to narrow that concept of identity so as to operate within that context without giving way to any critical view from some other guys, probably from social work or from anything other than psychology, to redefine it, to say, no, 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 that's not the way we look at it now. So you have to define your perimeters, define how you look at a particular topic. So therefore, collecting materials, secondary materials from works would depend very much on the relationship between those works and the primary source. I mean, what you are writing about. And also, you also want to evaluate the credentials of the author. Is he a knowledgeable author? Is he an expert in that area? An expert on that subject? Has he or she written something on that area? Or has he or she written other books? How reliable is he in terms of telling you something about the American dream? How knowledgeable is he? Then you also have to look at, even if you don't know how knowledgeable he is, you might look at where that thing, the article or the book was published. There are some well-published or well-established publishing houses that do, in fact, publish critical essays. And before they publish these essays are peer-reviewed. They're sent to anonymous proofreaders. I've done several of them. I don't know where they're coming from. They identify me because of my expertise and send them to me. And I go through them in a very thorough and methodical way to see that the paper reflects what is required and is up to par, is up to standard in terms of what is required for professional scientific publications. And I evaluate the paper based on the subject, the style, the mechanics of writing, or everything we use in evaluating your papers in class. And at the end of my evaluation, I either suggest whether the paper needs some revisions or whether they need some kind of tweaking here or there or fine-tuning here. And I can recommend, I can either send it back recommending publication with revisions or no publications at all because of major flaws and major errors and problems, or I can recommend a change of a particular other aspect of the paper. So my expertise comes to play here because I know a whole lot about publications and how to and what publishing is all about. So therefore, the knowledge in that area makes me an expert. So any critical article we are interested in or looking at must be written by somebody who has the knowledge, who is being vetted in that area to be an expert, or whose paper has been published by one of those major publishers. You know, they normally would not just publish your paper if they don't vet it, if they don't send it through unidentified or editors who have to go through all of that and evaluate the paper. That's why it takes quite some time to publish a paper. So after you've vetted that, therefore, you need to come back. What of about 2 or 3 articles that say about the same thing but in different ways? And that is where your own judgment comes in to see which of the 2 would best express what you are saying. But at the end of that, through what we call internal citation, you may also use a C note to indicate that this same article or idea is expressed by another person, but you have chosen to take but this other one. And if you summarize, remember, then you can adequately and acceptably use the 2 authors. But most of the time, some of the things you want to extrapolate from the work may be so commonsensical that you don't need documentation. So you shouldn't just paraphrase or create a note simply because you got an idea from somewhere. You might have gotten it from somewhere, but that idea is so commonsensical that you don't need to document it. Like for instance, HBCUs, you can document something about where somebody says HBCUs are predominantly black colleges or we're open for black colleges. I mean, that's why HBCUs are. But if you were to introduce something like the increasing numbers of non-blacks in black schools by giving me a definite number, that is where you need to identify where you got the source from, because that is not the norm. And since it's not the norm, you need to identify where you got the source from. And when you're talking about numbers too, especially you're being specific, 50%, 30%, or 5 students, 12 students, those specific numbers would need documentation. Where did you get the exact number? But to use words like indefinite words like some, most of the students, a majority of the students, that is a cop-out. That's a way of avoiding direct documentation, and you want to avoid that as much as possible. Be very specific, collect the material that you need from the text, and remember, you have to document it. Documentation is not just identifying, remember, it's not just identifying where you got the work from. But remember, the way you express it will also reflect your academic honesty. Because plagiarism, what is called plagiarism, is not just failing to document, to acknowledge the source. Remember, it's the way you present it. There's what we call unintentional plagiarism. You got an idea from a book, you're writing exactly the way it is in the book. You don't put quotation marks, but at the end of that, you document, you identify where the source is from. But remember, the first part of that expression indicates that those are your words, but you got the words from somewhere else. But remember, you can either paraphrase the words, put them in your own words, or give a summary of the excerpt or the chapter or the page. Otherwise, you'll be committing plagiarism. Yes, you have identified, you have acknowledged the source, but in the presentation of that source, you plagiarize because you put them, the words exactly the way they are in the original source. With that, actually putting quotation marks to indicate that you were doing direct quotation. And that's equally as bad as not acknowledging those words. But remember again, your commonsensical ideas may rhyme with commonsensical ideas or common knowledge expressed in another text, but you are using that common knowledge does not imply that you have plagiarized. Because this is common knowledge, and anybody writing about HBCUs would definitely tell us that we have a lot of black students. That's commonsensical. But you should also be critical, like I said, not just to pass judgment or out of laziness to make sweeping statements. You'll be committing the fault called generalization. You are generalizing without adequate information to show that what you are saying is really true. Generalization. You have errors like let me see. Illogical reasoning. Faulty claims. Okay. Even in terms of supporting your points, you want to ask the questions: how far? When was this written? For any good research paper, your sources shouldn't be more than 10 years old. Except it's a historical document. That way you have to go back even to the beginning of when some things were written, probably the 18th century. And some of these works have never been reprinted. Otherwise, with most current topics, your sources should not be more than 10 years old, because perceptions and positions keep on changing. We've seen so many changes about coffee. How many cups you take a day? Others say don't take it. It raises your blood pressure. Others say you need it so that your blood should circulate faster. So the perceptions keep on changing. Research keeps on changing. Therefore, you want to be with the most current so that your assertions will not be undercut or defeated or deflated by a much more recent publication where the guy will say, no, what you're saying is archaic, it's old knowledge. Make sure it is actually very, very recent. And is the source relevant? You know, we talk of documentation, we talk about using sources, but when you can't find the sources, you can't just create sources because you need them. Are the sources relevant? Yeah, we're talking about Hansberry. Lauren Hansberry, the author of A Raisin in the Sun. Any critical article on Hansberry may not necessarily talk about the American dream in The Raisin in the Sun. You can't just go to that article because it is on the author and about the author and extract information from there for your paper on the American dream in A Raisin in the Sun without looking at the relationship between what you're extracting and your topic, your own subject. The sources, please, must be relevant. You must get something that is absolutely relevant in order to explain the relevance. I remember your explanation of the relevance will not be a footnote to say it is relevant, but to see how what you have extrapolated from there fits into your argument. Remember, that paper is one paper. It is not fragmented into sections from critic 1, critic 2, critic 3. But all the critics come together, remember, to build a paper so that it flows smoothly from the beginning to the end. Is the source reliable? Does the evidence come from recognized experts and authoritative situations and institutions? And moreover, again, are the sources accurate? Is the information accurate? That's why before you actually start doing a paper, you also have to have a vague idea of what you're looking for. And if the information is accurate, it brings you close to that the aha moment when you say, yes, I think this is what I'm looking for. Because it is in line with what you are looking for. It is logical and it makes sense. Have they been gathered, interpreted, and reported responsibly? That's the information. Is the sampling accurate for you and adequate for you to pass judgment on it? So that's why research is quite exciting, because it helps to establish your own expertise and never shortchange yourself or belittle yourself by saying, oh, look, I don't know anything, I am just. It's not about you just, because you can see further than some critics can see. And remember again, some of these texts were written by people just graduates with their first degrees. Some of your colleagues, some are written by even college students. So that they were not better than you, they only came before you. So you still have an opportunity to make an impression on your reader. So as you start thinking about your paper, look again at your theme. Look at what we have read so far. Hey, you may equally be interested in not only the American dream, but something like religion, in any of the works we have read, or any work we haven't read. But again, so long as the work falls within literature itself, I'm not just talking about the history of religion in America. That's a historical topic. I'm not interested in that. You may be interested in looking at African American authors and religion, how each of them is influenced by religion, or how they borrow themes or subjects from religion to write about their lives or the lives of the African American. Or you may be interested in writing about freedom and the various aspects of freedom and how the theme or subject of freedom has captured many of the African American authors or even the Renaissance. You may well be interested in that. To look at the concept or the image of Africa in some of those African American writers. Because there was a time during which most of the authors here, especially the Harlem Renaissance, where most of the authors used Africa as a theme, one as a destination. They wanted to go to Africa, and as a theme, which was a counterpoint of America, the Africa of freedom and liberty, and the American of enslavement and discrimination. You have County Collins doing that, Maya Angelou's Africa. I think Claude McKay might have written a couple of poems about Africa. You may be interested in that, and therefore looking at how they perceive Africa. The African Dance, I think, was by Claude McKay, I think so. I'm not quite sure. I don't have the book here with me. But these are themes that have come up persistently. And therefore, I am here at any time to answer your questions. Please feel free to email me. Feel free to call me. My extension is 2272. Or you email me with the Ngwang, that's Emmanuel Ngwang, not the Ngwang Emmanuel, Emmanuel Ngwang. It comes directly to me. Or just respond to any of the emails I've sent to you. And I am still waiting for some of you to turn in your works, your assignments. The short story, remember the short story everyday use. The question was, or the exercise was to talk about how Big Mama, or the mother, treats the two girls, Maggie and Dee. The mother's attitude towards the two, and how does that attitude represent a dilemma in life. Or you may want to look at culture and tradition in that short story. Is Dee truly a protector of culture? What of Maggie? Is Maggie there to preserve culture or to put culture to everyday use? Then again, the poems. Remember, we talked about the poems, Road Not Taken, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, Nobody, by then Gwendolyn Queen's Mother. Yeah, I'm flipping through, that's why I'm breaking. Real Cool by Gwendolyn. Then we also talked about Langston Hughes' Dreams, Harlem. Let V-Day be my V-Day. Let America be America again. Mother to Son, a whole bunch of them. And also other works, like Emily Dickinson's Nobody, where he says, I am nobody, nobody knows me. And from the time somebody knows you, you become somebody. You lose everything. If you are a nobody, therefore we are too. And the underlying concept here is that once you become popular, once people know you, you lose that identity, that privacy. There's no longer any privacy whatsoever. We've seen this in politics, where politicians have gone out there to run for posts or positions, and as soon as they open their mouth, they start running. Hunters are there hunting behind him for every dirt in his life, for everything he has done. Some of them have never recovered from that public exposure, either as police officers found that they were corrupt or presidential candidates. Most of their backgrounds and their family backgrounds were revealed, exposed, and they lose everything they have. And that's what Emily Dickinson is talking about, I'm a nobody. And by the time you become a somebody, you begin to smell defeat, because they will do everything to destroy you. And those poems, I asked you just to look at to compare them, and also to look at the cultural values, how the authors were responding to culture, how were they responding to values within the culture. Then for the drama, I'm slowing it down because our subject here, our paper, is supposed to be on drama, the American dream. I want you to use that the sun also rises, erasing in the sun, fences, and other works whatsoever, especially within the level of drama. I know the sun also rises is not drama. To write your paper, the research paper. And I will be expecting you to start sending me some work. The annotated bibliography, remember the annotated bibliography? It's a list of books you have read, you've selected to use, you have read, and then you comment on them, you write notes about, the relevance of that source, the pages from which you have and you will be taking excerpts, and you actually pull them out in order to situate their relevance to your paper. You are commenting, you're annotating, you are commenting. Remember, until your book is yours, do not annotate. Annotate means to write on. Usually you write on the margin, and sometimes with my books, that's why I always have two texts of the same book. My study text, you see me drawing lines across pages and actually writing on the margins and identifying what I want from that page or what is necessary on that page. Until it is your book, you cannot do that. Or if we can photocopy pages from the library, you may be able to write well. Use a different ink, something that stands out. And if you've already identified the organization of your essay, it will be so easy for you to see where that excerpt you have in your hand falls. Is it part of the introduction? Is it paragraph 1, paragraph 2, 3, or the conclusion? Or where does it actually belong? So again, annotation and your index cards, get them ready, because I shall want you to scan them and send them to me so that I can make a match between the index cards and your paper. All right. And I'm also suggesting and encouraging you to look for any book that is available. I have one here, From Inquiry to Academic Writing, a text and a reader. There are several of those books you can find them in the library or online about research. Remember the various stages of research. Number 1, looking at a research paper. I think I may just run out a copy of my paper and send to you, looking at a research paper. 2, knowing the requirements of a paper, and knowing that a research paper is not just a collection of critical information or material or your own opinion, but it's a combination of your opinion, your ideas, and facts that you've collected. and that the research requires a lot of reading, and that you start right away doing the research. Number 3, the style that's going to be used, specifics, will be the MLA style, typed 12 font, double space, Times New Roman, indented paragraphs, indentation. We don't quite encourage endnotes, but if you have to provide one, okay, do it accurately. Then you have works cited page. What else? You start your research right away. The first draft, the second draft, and revisions. And make sure you use a central library or a central position where you can always go to get the material and at ease. And then again, I'm there, seek help. You know, these are the 7 steps in research. Though I don't have the paper with me, but I've analyzed them the way they're supposed to be, 1, 2, 3, the beginning and the end, but they all encompass, they all include all the 7 elements of a research. 10 your paper on time. 10 in your paper on time is one of them. A paper, when it comes to a research paper, it's just about dates. There's no lateness. You may have a rough first draft or second draft. Send it to me to look at if you are interested, but that's not part of the requirement. The outline is not part of the requirement, but it helps you organize your thoughts into a meaningful paragraphs and structure. Start the research right away. Yeah, that's one of them. I know the requirements of the research is one of them. Get the books from a central position is one of them. So there are a whole bunch of them. I know different people will tell you different things to do, but the key thing is ultimately to write that paper. Avoid plagiarism, avoid plagiarism, avoid plagiarism. I have turned it on. All I need to do is turn your paper onto my turn it on. It tells you what you got from where and how much of it you got from our side. Let's make sure we do a good job. We're here for you, and I'm here in my office. I'm here every day except for Friday. But although I'm here on Friday, but I do most of my work on Friday. Please feel free to email me or to call me so that we work together to get this successfully done. Again, thank you. I'll be talking to you later. Bye.